How you doing, folks? I hope you can see me. Yeah, this is John in the van. Crazy John. How you doing? Yeah, I'm going to try a few segments, see how it goes. I'm going to talk about anything. I'm going to talk about sports, comedy. I'm a stand-up comedian. I'm going to talk about a lot of different things. Just bear with me. I got this condition called essential tremor. When I grab things, I shake. That explains why I'm a chronic masturbator. I don't know. I got a vasectomy when I was 30 years old, right in the middle of my sexual prime. You know how that is, guys, when you're 30 years old. The wind blows, you get hard, right? So the doctor goes to me, Mr. Pauly, you got to come back here after your 30th orgasm. We got to make sure your sperm is sterile. I said, after my 30th orgasm, doctor? He says, yes, Mr. Pauly. I said, okay, I'll see you in 3 days. I don't know. My psychic went out of business. Kind of bummed me right out. Her husband died unexpectedly. Got thrown out of my nudist colony this past summer. Couldn't help myself. I put Viagra in the lemonade. Oh, yeah. Almost got hit by a car a couple days ago. I'm jogging. I come to a set of lights. It says, don't walk. I ran across the street. Who am I kidding, jogging? I think a jogger need oxygen. I'm so old, my birthday cake's become a fire hazard. That's how old I am. But, yeah, I can go on and on with the jokes. A lot of problems stem from when I was little. I had no friends. When I was 7 years old, I had a little invisible friend. Played with the other kids in the neighborhood, okay? Played hide and seek. I could never find them. I don't mind telling you, though, I actually skipped a grade in elementary school. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I skipped a grade. I went from 5th to 4th grade. Went off to high school. I don't mind telling you, my senior year in high school, I was the smartest, most athletic, most handsome kid in my class. It's true. I was homeschooled. I don't know. There was a girl I used to love in high school. Her name was Kim Smithson. She ignored me for 4 years. She wanted nothing to do with me. But anyways, 2 days before graduation, I actually used to bump into her just to say, excuse me. That's how ridiculous it was. But 2 days before graduation, she calls me up in a very sexy voice. She goes, John, come over my house. Nobody's home. Folks, I ran, okay? I ran a mile in 5 minutes. She was right. Nobody was fucking home. I don't know. My first ex-wife was very controlling. My wedding band had a LoJack in it. Yeah, my second ex-wife, I'll never forget it. She cut me down to sex once a month. But I really couldn't complain. She cut out my sister completely. It's tough being me. Then my third ex-wife was fooling around on me. I was in total denial. One summer, while I was working and she was home, the pool guy was over the house with her 2, 3, 4 times a week like clockwork all summer. The neighbor confronts me Columbus Day weekend. Why doesn't he wait a little fucking longer? The summer's over, correct? He grabs me. So we gotta talk. I don't know what's going on here, but you're working. Your wife's home. The pool guy's over the house with her all summer long, okay? I smell a rat. I get very defensive. I said, Nick, I'm giving my wife the benefit of the doubt here. I said, John, you don't have a pool. I'm telling you. So what else is happening? Right as we speak, I'm in Dover, New Hampshire. I'm getting ready to retire. I'm 67 years old. I've had a small business since 1986. I think 38 years is enough. I'm retiring probably, I got it sold probably sometime in January or February. But, you know, the logistics of getting there, it takes time. You know, it takes a lot of time when you're selling a small business. There's a lot of stipulations you got to look at. But I'm looking forward to it. Talk a little sports. The biggest joke ever in sports history was the 1986 Red Sox-Mets World Series. The Red Sox was the biggest gaffe in the history of sports. Let me go over the logistics with you. Red Sox are leading 5-3. Bottom of the 10th inning. Calvin Schiraldi is pitching for the Red Sox. He was their closer at the time. Wally Backman flies out to Jim Rice. 1 out. 2 outs away from a world championship, and we haven't won one since 1918. Keith Hernandez comes up, hits a deep fly ball to Dave Henderson. Dave Henderson makes the catch. 2 outs. We're right there. Gary Carter comes up. He lines the base hit in the left field. I wasn't that nervous at this point. The next batter, Kevin Mitchell, was a pinch hitter. He lines the base hit in the center field. Now I'm getting nervous. The next batter, Ray Knight, bloops a single in the right center. So now it's 1st and 3rd, and it's 5-4. McNamara comes out, who is probably the world's worst manager, in my opinion. I mean, he's awful. He puts in Bob Stanley, who really didn't pitch much in the series. It was a cold night. Stanley throws a sinker ball. Made no sense. What does Stanley do? He throws a pitch, which they call a wild pitch, but Rich Gedman, the catcher, should have had it. It gets by Gedman, run scores 5-5. Man at second base. At this point, I'm done. Okay? At this point, I figure if it goes into extra innings, they're going to lose. And I was mentally gonzo. I mean, totally fucking gonzo at this point. The next batter, Mookie Wilson, hits a slow grounder to Bill Buckner. Goes through Buckner's legs. Ray Knight scores. Mets win 6-5. Without doubt, that is the biggest choke in sports history. Then the Mets went on to win Game 7, 8-5. Red Sox actually were leading Game 7, 3-0. Dwight Evans and Rich Gedman hit home runs. But everybody blames Buckner. I don't. I blame the manager, John McNamara. Bruce Hurst already won 2 games in the series. The Mets were having a really difficult time with him. Once Giraldi gave up the first hit to Gary Carter, Bruce Hurst should have come in and got the 3rd out, and we would have won the World Series. And a guy that's gone totally unnoticed, who was a total GOAT, was Rich Gedman. That was a passed ball. Google it, folks. Google it. It was a little backhander, and it got by him. He should have had it, especially in that situation. But I've been a Red Sox fan so long, I've seen it all. 1978, the Bucky Dent home run. I was at Game 7 of 1975. Me and my buddy Pat Conley were there. We had standing room tickets. The Red Sox were winning 3-0. They end up losing 4-3. Tony Perez had a big 2-run homer, which kind of sparked the Reds off Bill Lee. That was a tough one. My buddy Kyle Yastrzemski, my favorite athlete of all time, flew out to end the game. But Yaz, you talk about a clutch hitter. Yastrzemski was a great clutch hitter, totally overlooked. In 1967, the Red Sox were fighting for a pennant with the Twins. And back then, there were no divisions. First place in American League, first place National League play, with no divisions. So the Red Sox were a surprise team because in 1966, they finished in 9th place out of the 10 teams. So 67 all comes down to the last 2 games against the Twins. We had to win both games. Well, Kyle Yastrzemski goes 7 for 8. Okay? Totally clutch, made a couple of really nice plays in left field. He was probably the greatest left fielder that ever lived defensively. There's a real argument for that. That's how good he was. Then we get to the, I'm losing my train of thought. That's what happens when you become a senior citizen, folks. Then in the 1967 World Series against the Cardinals, Yaz hit, I think, a little over 400 with 3 home runs. And keep in mind, folks, I'm not looking at anything. This is all off the top of my head on my granddaughter's health, okay? This is all off the top of my head. And Yastrzemski in the 1975 playoff against the Oakland A's was a one-man defensive show. He made one play after the other in left field. Reggie Jackson said only God could make those plays. That's what Reggie Jackson said, who was on the opposing team. Yaz hit, I think, a little over 500 in the 3-game sweep of Oakland. Then we go on to the 1975 World Series. It went 7 games, like I said earlier. I think Yaz hit about 310, 320. And then in the 1978 playoff game against the Yankees for the Eastern Division in the American League, Yastrzemski made the last out. Rich Gossage came in. Yastrzemski popped up to Nettles. It was 5-4. We had runners on base. But people forget, Yastrzemski earlier in the game hit a home run off Rod Gindry and also had a single that drove in a run. Yaz is his nickname. Was my idol as a kid, and I'm not nuts about, putting athletes on a pedestal. I'm really not. I think most of them are just spoiled rotten, but that's my opinion. But Yastrzemski was definitely my favorite player, and him I idolized. It's probably the only athlete I idolized. I met Bill Walton once in Colorado. He couldn't have been nicer. He was so nice. I was at the Tetro Hotel in a baseball trip. Me and my son Eric, my oldest, I only got 2 children. My son Eric, we used to go to a baseball trip every year. So we went to Colorado to watch the Red Sox play the Rockies. This was years ago. I can't really recall the year, but it was a long time ago. And my son's huge into basketball. So I'm hanging around the Tetro out front. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm stiff. I haven't had a drink, by the way, 5 years, December 21st. But that's beside the point. I was drunk. This little car pulls up with a bike on the roof. This little Asian girl gets out of the driver's seat. And who gets out of the passenger seat? Bill Walton. And he comes walking towards me. I said, Bill, how are you? And he was very, very congenial. He was so nice. I said, can you do me a favor? My son is in the computer room playing with the computer. My son was about 16, 17 at the time. I said, can you go in and say hi to him, tap him on the shoulder and surprise him? Bill Walton with that big smile says, sure thing. What's your name? I said, my name's John. He says, nice to meet you, John. So he went in the computer room, tapped my son on the shoulder. My son turned around, seen Bill Walton, and he almost croaked. But Bill Walton was the best. The next morning at breakfast, Bill Walton made a point to say hi to Eric while he was eating breakfast. Bill Walton understood what a lot of athletes don't understand. You're making a lot of money playing a kid's game, okay? You're gifted. And Walton understood that. He knew he had it good. And a lot of athletes today don't get that, okay? But Bill Walton was something. And he was on the 86 Celtics. Kind of put him over the edge. 86 Celtics beat the Rockets 4-2 in 1986. They had a phenomenal team. Robert Parrish, future Hall of Famer at the time. Dennis Johnson, future Hall of Famer. Bill Walton, future Hall of Famer. Kevin McHale, future Hall of Famer. Larry Bird, future Hall of Famer. I'm not a big Larry Bird fan. I think he was the best passing forward that ever lived. Okay, he could rebound. He never took a playoff. He won 3 championships. He was in the finals 5 times. Again, the greatest passing forward that ever lived was Larry Bird. But I have a little issue with Bird. He's got a daughter from his first marriage. I guess he was married briefly, and he's never wanted a relationship with his daughter, which I think sucks. That's your blood we're talking here. I have a relationship with her, and from what I understand, she's been dying to have a relationship with him, and he just, every now and then, he'll call her or whatever, but there's nothing there. There's nothing concrete in their relationship. So I'm not a big Bird guy off the court, but on the court, he was something. I had Bird number 2 on my all-time list of Celtics. Bill Russell's got to be number 1. He won 11 championships in 13 years. You can't argue with that. My third pick would be John Havlicek. John Havlicek is very underrated. He won 8 championships, played about 46 minutes a game, great defender, great scorer. And remember, there was no three-point shot until 1979. And Havlicek was hitting a lot of those shots when he played. And I met Havlicek one time, very briefly. It was after a Celtics game. I was with the Celtics game with a buddy of mine. We were probably about 14 years old. There was a matinee game during the Christmas vacation. And we knew where the players were coming out. And John Havlicek gave me his autograph, and he was smiling. He was very nice. Don Chaney, who was my favorite player, he was great. I told him, I said, John, you're my favorite player. He says, so you're the guy. I just love Chaney. He was number 12, and he played great defense. And he was just a spark plug. And keep in mind, he was also on the 1969 championship team with Russell and the 74 team with Dave Cowens. Cheney was something. He played great defense. JoJo White, number 10, great player. But JoJo was a scorer, number 10. He won championships in 74 and 76. Yeah, in 74, they beat the Bucks in 7. They were huge underdogs. They won Game 7 in Milwaukee by a lot. In 1976, they beat the Phoenix Suns in 6. Game 5 was arguably the greatest game of all time. If you ask people that were around a long time like me, because I'm an old fuck, that was probably the most exciting basketball game I ever seen. It was no end. Just when you think it was over, something would happen. And Phoenix were huge underdogs, and they hung in there. They barely made the playoffs. I think they finished the season 40-42. They were one of the last teams to get in, and they clawed their way to the finals, and they gave us a scare. They had Paul Westphal. Paul Westphal was a great player. We had him. We traded him off for Charlie Scott. And that was a good trade because Charlie Scott for 2-3 years helped us immensely. But it's just interesting when you think of those trades. Westphal turned out to be a perennial all-star. But being a Celtics fan, I started following the Celtics in 1965. I was 8 years old. They beat the Lakers in the championship. I think it was 6 games. Then in 66, they won it. 67, they lost in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Philadelphia 76ers in 5 games. And everybody thought the Celtics were done. But the Celtics came back again and won it in 68 and won it in 69. They were huge underdogs in 1969. The Lakers had Will Chamberlain, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, and somehow we won Game 7 in Los Angeles. Amazing, but we did it. I'm a grandfather these days. Nothing like being a grandfather. I love it. I totally love it. My granddaughter, I love her to death. She's so cute. She's actually turned 6 months 3 days ago. Not that I'm keeping track. I guess I am keeping track, right? But speaking of baseball, I was the world's worst baseball player. When I was 6 years old, I was in a T-ball league. I was always looking for a base on balls. Couldn't golf either. I'm the only guy that brings a ball scoop of miniature golfing. Simulated golf, I yell 4. That's how bad I am. I mean, I'm a bad golfer. But, this will be interesting. I'll come up with something every week. I'll do this. Right now I'm in Dover, New Hampshire. I'm waiting for a customer to open up, and I thought this was a good time to do this because I got the time. But, talking about the 86 Red Sox, to this day, I just, I'll tell you a story. The next day was a Sunday. Game 6 was on a Saturday night. Roger Clemens pulled himself up with the lead with the blister, by the way. But that's another story. I'm never a big Roger Clemens guy. I think he's a cheat. I mean, yeah, he won 7 Cy Youngs. He went to the Yankees as a mercenary. Great pitcher. Steroid user, which... to me, that's not a huge deal because a lot of guys use steroids that we don't even know about to enhance their career, which I understand, But, it was interesting. It was interesting that Game 7 was supposed to be on a Sunday in the 86 World Series. It got rained out. It was on a Monday, and I was burnt out. I watched none of the game. I was too tired. I was emotionally gonzo. But, the next day I went to a flea market in North Reading after Game 6, and it was a Sunday. North Reading, Massachusetts had a flea market then. I'm walking around, and everybody's like a zombie. It was the strangest feeling. Everybody's like, you believe what happened last night? You believe what happened last night? And everybody's walking around, and they're distraught, they're depressed. And I'm saying to myself, boy, this really affected people. And they finally won it in 04. Took a long time, but was a lot of heartbreaks with the Red Sox. But I can't complain that much. They've won it 4 times since I've been alive. 04, 07, 2013, 2018. So I really can't complain that much. So it's been a good run. I've seen the Patriots win 6 Super Bowls. Great run. I've seen the Celtics win 11 championships. Great run. I've seen the Bruins win in 70, 72, and 2011. So I've seen the Bruins win it 3 times. And speaking of the Bruins, Bobby Orr, without question, was the greatest player of all time. I had a Gretzky and Mario Lemieux. The problem is Orr had to retire at 30, 31 years old with bad knees. But if you Google Bobby Orr, when he was in his prime, nobody dominated like Bobby Orr did. He didn't have a contemporary. I mean, he was that good. He was just something, you know. But he was something to watch. He'd kill a penalty. He'd keep the puck sometimes for 30, 40, 45 seconds and just skate around with the puck, killing the penalty. And again, he didn't have a contemporary. He was just so much better than everybody else. I know Gordie Howe was around then. I get it. Gordie Howe was a great player, but Orr was still better than Gordie Howe. Bobby Howell was much better than Bobby Howell, in my opinion. You know, and Orr's amazing, only 1 or 2 times with those early 70 teams. They were loaded. I mean, you had Bobby Orr, Don Orey, Rick Smith, Dallas Smith, Ken Hodge, John Busick, Phil Esposito, Freddie Stanfield, Jerry Cheevers. Their backup goalie was good. Eddie Johnson, Ace Bailey, God rest his soul, in 9/11. But that team was loaded, and they should have won it more than 2 times. They won it in 70 and 72. And with that team, they should have won 3, 4, even 5 cups. 74, they were in the finals against the Flyers. And Bernie Perrant stood on his head. He was amazing. Bernie Perrant was a great goaltender. In Game 6, he beat us 1-0. We just could not get the puck by him in Philadelphia. It was tough. It was a tough one to take because the Bruins were better than the Flyers. But then again, the Flyers went on and won it the next year in 75. They beat the Sabres. So Flyers had that 2-year window where they had a mini dynasty. All right, folks, I got to hit the road. My customer came in. Been nice talking to you, folks. I'll catch you next trip.